Welcome to the Bitchin' Siblings Podcast.
Okay, so welcome everybody to the Bitchin' Siblings Podcast. I'm Ginny.
Hi everyone, it's Amy.
And today we are going to discuss paranormal activity and stories. So, Amy, do you have any fun interactions or stories about paranormal ghost scary stories?
I don't. I was legitimately racking my brain trying to think of, have I had anything happen? And no, I don't have any personal interactions.
None at all.
Not that I can think of,
Nothing
at
that's
least.
ever happened that's been like, well, that was weird and there's really like no explanation for it.
I take that back. There's only one that I can think of, and you're involved, and so is Chris.
What?
So one day when we were kids, you were spending the night with me at Grandma's, and I had my trundle bed. And I don't know if I was on my bed and you were on the trundle, or if you were on mine and I was on the trundle. I don't remember how we went to sleep. We were in opposite beds, and Chris swears up and down that he didn't move us.
I think I remember that.
Yeah, and I still have no fucking clue how that happened.
I mean, it was the middle of the night. We probably at some point rolled over each other or, not sleptwalked, obviously because we weren't walking, but
I was maybe 8. So
Yeah.
like,
we were young.
I don't know, because my trundle bed had the wheels on it. So if we
Yeah.
rolled over each other, I just don't know how the trundle bed wouldn't have moved a little, because it was also a wood floor. I didn't have like a carpeted
Yeah.
floor.
I mean, I can see how you think that's, odd.
That's the only thing that I can think of that doesn't have like an explanation for it. You know what I mean?
That's so crazy because I have lots of weird things that have happened to me that are just like, there's really no explaining that.
My animals stare off into space or like stare at a wall. Like that's the extent of what I, personally experience. And I remember like after we got into civil reenacting, Grandma always wanted to go to the East Coast and like stay in those haunted hotels that were supposedly haunted by Civil War ghosts. And I always told her, I was like, absolutely, you're going to go by yourself. I'm not going with you. And she's like, why? You would be more likely to see them because you don't want to see them. And I'm like, exactly why.
I don't like
Same.
scary things. Like, I don't like watching scary movies. I don't like listening to scary stories, except I am very much into true crime, more or less. And I've always just kind of, because my husband asks me this all the time, because he's like, well, you don't like horror movies and stuff, but you listen to this. And I said, that stuff's already happened. And so for me, I kind of listen to it as like an educational thing. Like, this is what happened to this person. And this is, the steps, not that I'm in any way victim blaming, but just, oh, okay, well, that's, things were different like in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s.
Here's the things I could have done differently if it were me.
Yeah, that doesn't necessarily mean it would have changed the outcome because people are fucking crazy and, there's only so much you can do. But I more or less learned from like educational, and a lot about the judicial system and how certain things are charged or why certain things aren't charged and,
Don't get me started there.
Well, yeah. And I mean, I listen to it from like true crime is more of like an educational thing, not for scariness.
Yeah.
I'm not listening to the stuff that's, blood and guts and people screaming. It's talking about, people's life stories prior to, whatever happened. So I don't like scary movies. I don't like ghost stories. Those things freak me out. So I don't know why I seem to have so many like odd
interactions
or experiences that are unexplainable or just super ironic how they I just don't know. I have been told by people that I like apparently have like there's something about me that these spirits or whatever are attracted to, so I'm more sensitive, but like I don't know that I believe in that. Do you kind of believe in that sort of thing or no?
I don't know, because I've never really had many interactions or experiences. I don't know that I believe in ghosts. I don't know that I want to believe in ghosts, and not because that's scary, but if ghosts exist, that means that when we die, we're stuck. There's no moving on from this world, which is the bad place, by the way.
I agree. I would, yeah. I do think though that like if you do believe in ghosts or whatever, everybody's got a different perception. I do find it interesting that there aren't ghosts of people who died. I mean, you're not hearing people hearing about ghost stories about Tupac or Biggie. It's always people from
The revolutionary,
the 1800s or the 20s and 30s or the revolutionary, and it's like, okay, so why, if there is such a thing as ghosts, why are there so many more apparitions and or stories about centuries ago as opposed to more recently? Like, what's the reason for that?
That's a very good point. And like, I also don't hear a lot of stuff about prior to like the 1700s either. Maybe that's because of where we live, and there weren't as many people in the areas we live as there used to be, like before the Americans came over. So maybe that's part of why we don't hear from anything before. But I am curious as to why it all kind of stops, or at least from what I've gathered. Right, like you said, right around the 20s, the 1920s. So
yeah, like you just don't hear about of a lot of these things, and obviously, like it's not like people are usually advertising this, but like even when they make movies, the only movie that I think I've seen recent, and as I mean recent in the last 20-30 years, I guess that's my whole fucking life, but is like Sixth Sense. Like he saw that little boy who was being poisoned by his stepmom, and so, and they weren't old people, people who had died recently, and outside of that, not a lot of movies, if they are discussing something that's paranormal or ghostly, it's all
we again, we would like to put this out there that we don't watch scary movies. So if there are other ones, we just haven't seen them.
Correct. And I'm talking about the ones that are not that Sixth Sense is based on a true story, but it's like not like a spoof, or it's not a slasher film where it's really just to get, jump scares, it's part of the story of the thing. To me, that's like, I don't watch a lot of those. I don't watch any of them. I honestly don't even remember the last scary movie I saw.
So you want to hear like the extent of how scary I will watch? You
Sure.
Like,
and I have, but that's more of a psychological thriller, right?
See, and I think
I'll watch those.
See, and those, and I've also recently learned in the past week or two since we've done our last podcast, as far as books are concerned, I also.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second and just point out I am not drinking alcohol?
What are we drinking?
In the middle of the day. It's a bubbler. Okay. It's a those like caffeine sparkling waters. So it's like a sparkling flavored water, but it has caffeine in it.
Gotcha. I'm just drinking my lemon water.
I am on a 90-day alcohol-free cleanse.
Why?
Just to, clean, just to be healthy and every once in a while. And this is a really good time. I'm not super into like drinking on St. Patrick's Day or whatever. So for me, I'm not going to be drinking again until June 3rd, which is before my birthday. So like there's not a lot going on in the next couple of months where I would see myself needing to drink.
You don't plan on drinking a margarita with your tacos on Cinco de Mayo?
I might have a cheat day here and there, but like that's one day. So like if I were to like base my 90 days on that, I'd never have a time to do 90 days because there's always, so like a cheat day I'm okay with every once in a while if it's within reason. I'm just trying to just detox. So little insert there. Amy was talking about scary movies and psychological thrillers.
Oh.
And the TV show You.
Yeah. Oh, books. I've also learned that I'm getting into the mystery genre, and not like scary stuff, but like you said, psychological thrillers where you're like, wait, what happened here? Who did what? Like, and then you're trying to piece it all together while you're reading the book, or in my case, listening to it, because I listen to them while I'm at work. And oh my gosh, like 2 mysteries that I had no clue what the books were about when I checked them out from the library, but oh my gosh, like 2 mysteries, and I'm like, whoa, wait, who did this? And like, yeah, It's opened my eyes to a new genre for me.
Yeah. I'm not really. I think the last scary, quote unquote, movie I saw was A Quiet Place.
I won't watch that. That scares me.
It's. I think the part for me that was the most disturbing is the quietness. The whole film was quiet.
Was there like no score even?
No. Like, it is insane. It fucks with your head, because like it legitimately sounds like you have like noise canceling headphones out in the middle of nowhere where the only thing you would hear is birds. Like, I mean, it's creepy, but that's the appeal to it, and that's part of the story, is just how quiet and deafening the world would be if something happened like this. And thankfully in that movie, well, not in that movie, but thankfully one of the characters in the movie was deaf, so they did sign language anyways, so it made it so that they could interact with each other and communicate without ever having to talk.
I heard he specifically requested someone who was actually deaf to be hired.
Yeah. It's a psychological thriller in the sense that like shit like this could legitimately happen. Now, if you've been paying attention recently to any of these UFO flying saucer balloons that are flying over, and then apparently the Pentagon or somebody mentioned the other day that there's quite possibly a mothership out there somewhere in our solar system that are sending drones and blah, blah, blah. And this came from like NASA or something, and it's being like this. So if you believe in that stuff, and you think that something like this could theoretically happen, like psychologically, I cannot imagine having to live a life like that.
I'm just going to put this out there. If there are any aliens actually listening to this and intercepting, I would just like to put it on record. Just take me out right away. It's okay. No hard feelings. I'm done. Let's check out. Just saying.
I mean, I don't know. Depending on how nice they are, I'd be like, can you take me with you? I don't want to be here anymore.
Oh, well, man. I don't know if I could communicate with them. And like, even if they were nice,
you just tried to communicate with them and tell them to take you out. And now you're saying you wouldn't be able to communicate with them. So that would be your
excuse?
They
could understand me, but I wouldn't be able to understand them.
But how would they be able to understand you?
Because they are highly intelligent beings in my head. And humans are just fucking dumb.
Sadly.
Sorry.
That is a true statement. That is a very true statement.
And I'm saying that about myself, mind you. So
we're not we're not taking ourselves out of the equation here, people. This is as a whole.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyways, like that's like that. I'll do the psychological thrillers because they make you think. It's, it's not really jump scare. There is some of that in the movie, obviously, because it's so quiet that anytime any noise really comes, it's very profound. But like, that's the scariest thing. I don't like slasher films. And I also don't like movies like Paranormal Activity and like The Nun and whatever this new doll is, Megan the Doll, or whatever these movies are. Like,
yeah, that one looked creepy.
Fuck that shit. It did. And I will also tell you, if you've been listening to our podcast, since Toy Story is my number one movie, right? The franchise is my number one spot. The fucking, what is it? In the last movie, have you seen it?
But that's okay.
Okay, in the last movie, they have to go to a toy store, and one of the animals, toys or whatever, is like one of those like marionette vaudeville dolls. Okay. Those like kind of creepy dolls, and it is the creepiest motherfucking thing in that movie. Like that part disturbed me, and I am a 40-year-old woman, and it was a cartoon, and it's like, no. Mm-mm.
So my husband legitimately has 2 marionette puppets from his childhood.
Tell him that motherfucker.
They're in boxes.
I don't want to see them.
They're in boxes, along with my porcelain dolls.
No, we do not have dolls in our house. We do not have nothing. No, shit gets possessed too easily. Again, if you believe in that. That's just asking.
The funny thing is, I've heard so many people say that, especially about porcelain dolls. And I'm like, okay, I have 2 porcelain dolls. Our grandma at one point, I don't know if anyone else in the family still has theirs, but she at one point got every kid in the family a porcelain doll that had their name. And mine.
Not me.
She got you one. I remember it. And you were like, that thing's ugly.
Maybe that's why I don't
That's
remember,
very
'cause-
possible. But mine was just this little girl with a bowl haircut, which was perfect because about the time I had a bowl haircut, because I decided to chop off our neighbor's hair, and as a punishment, our biological mother cut my hair. I remember because the kid's name that I cut his hair was Alex. Why do I remember some stuff?
I don't remember this.
Yeah. So this porcelain doll has that bowl haircut, and it's eating like a chocolate ice cream cone, and it's got chocolate all over her face and all over her arms.
Yeah,
and
I remember that.
That one was the perfect fit for me because I still.
So what Amy's
I
trying
still
to
can't
say
fucking eat.
is she's creepy like a porcelain doll.
Yes, I am.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so that's just those things are creepy. I don't know. It just fucks with my head.
To me, that would be
I'm
like
not-
saying like any figurine could be like my Nutcracker back there.
No,
It's the same concept to
That
me.
wouldn't be. Again, but I think a lot of it has to do with when people make scary movies. Have you ever seen a scary movie where they've used a Nutcracker as the villain? No. You see dolls and clowns.
I have actually never seen a doll movie.
Well, I've not seen them. I'm just saying that based off of like previews that you see, you see dolls and you see clowns and you see little kids' toys like some sort of doll or animal like I've just never seen a Nutcracker. So to me, I would never associate that with paranormal anything.
So I got to share this little quick story. When I was about 12, my room was upstairs. I decided I was going to watch The Outer Limits with Grandma and Sunday one night. You want to know what that episode was about? A stuffed bear, a teddy bear that was possessed and like took children into this other realm under their bed. And so I told my grandma, I was like, I'm sleeping in your bed tonight. And you know what she told me? You do realize my bed's closer to the ground than yours.
Oh my God. Jesus, Grandma.
I remember that.
Right.
And she thought it was so funny. So funny. And looking back, it's kind of funny. And that sounds like something I would say now because I'm fucked up like that.
Oh my God. No. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a grown ass adult, and there are some times when I'm by myself, if my husband's not home, that I'll run and jump on the bed.
Right?
Not ashamed to admit it. I'm almost 41, and I will still do it from time to time. Or if I'm the only one in the house and I have to go downstairs and then come back up and turn off all the lights, I run up the stairs. We don't just walk slowly, like we run up the stairs. Okay, so I have had a lot of weird things that have happened, and one of the most there's a couple of them, and I'll describe a few, but there's a few that stand out as ones that are either really creepy or just have just been stuck in my head. So the very first one I can remember is, so we were in our house up in Gig Harbor, the old house, not the newer one. We were in the old house, and how the whole house was laid out. So we were at the dining room table, obviously, all the way to the very end of the kitchen, and Mom was in the kitchen, and you remember we had those traditional 80s hanging cabinets, so you couldn't see all the way across to the dining room if you were Mom's height, because if she turned around she would see cabinets. And it was Halloween, and Emily and I were at the table, and Emily was in a high chair, and I was sitting on the other side of the table. And you remember how big our dining room table was. It was certainly, and it was towards the end, so it was more of the narrow part, but still, I could reach across the table and still not touch her. We were far enough away. And Mom's plate was sitting on the table right next to where Emily would have been sitting in her high chair. Emily can't reach the plate because, again, she's in the high chair. Mom had gotten up to do something. I don't remember what she got up to do. But out of nowhere, her spoon was laying on the edge of the plate, and something hit it on the side, and the spoon flew up, food went everywhere, and both me and Emily were just sitting there what the hell? And my mom got so pissed off. She was like, that is not funny. And she was yelling at me, thinking that I got mad at Emily or whatever, and threw my spoon or something. And I was like, dude, it was not me. I didn't touch it. I was like, Emily, and Emily started crying at this point because it was freaky. And my mom got so mad at me, and I was bawling, and I was like, I swear to God, I did not touch your spoon. I was she could tell I was like scared at that point, not just crying because I was in trouble, but like I was legitimately scared because I didn't even have time to process what the hell happened before mom was yelling at me. So like, you know, and it was, mom was yelling because we were stressed. We were getting ready to leave for Halloween and we had to bundle up and go out and go trick-or-treating, and we had to eat dinner, and my mom had an in-home daycare and it didn't close until like 5, and so we were really stressed. And oh my God, that one to this day, just like that was the very first one, I think. And because there's no explanation, nobody in the vicinity of her plate, like there was nobody nearby that could touch it. And it was hit with so much force. It's not like it fell off a little bit, like it was sitting on the edge. Like, oh my God, I wish I could have videotaped it. It was so creepy.
That's crazy. So, like, there's no way that, like, Jasmine could have been under the table and, like, bumped it and, like, given it some extra force?
No, Jasmine had passed at that point. And Chelsea, we hadn't even gotten her yet. Because I think we got Chelsea that Christmas. Or maybe this might have been the Christmas after, because Pa wasn't around. So no, Chelsea was about a year. And Jasmine was still around when we had Chelsea. So yeah, but no, none of the dogs were near because I think mom was feeding them or something. Like I just remember thinking to myself, because I know Pa wasn't there anymore. It was just me and mom and Emily. Emily was in a high chair because I remember, at that point she would have been about a year and a half. So she wasn't necessarily like in a high chair, but a high chair just because it was easier to clean up. And like I said, mom had an in-home daycare at the time. So we just tossed her in the high chair, put her up to the table, but she still had her tray in front of her. So it's not like she was in some of those high chairs where you can stick them under the table and the table's there where their food is. Nothing. The dogs weren't anywhere nearby. Mom was nowhere nearby. I am not kidding you. It was the weirdest thing.
That is weird.
And then my other story is in that house too.
Okay.
So, do you believe in like Ouija boards?
I believe that they are creepy and I want nothing to do with them, just in case they are real.
Okay, but you don't necessarily believe which is which on whether or not they're capable of contacting spirits or not.
I have no belief either direction. I just don't want to mess with it and try.
Okay, so back when we were in high school, our freshman year, nope, it was like 8th grade or something like that, because my grandma was still alive. My grandma passed away in November of my 8th grade year, I think. So my girlfriends and I had found this game in downtown Gig Harbor. There used to be this candy or this toy store. I honestly don't remember the name of it, just because it was like one of those hole in the wall mom and pop game stores or toy stores that kind of smelled musty and like, you know what I'm talking about. Like, it's just like that old school, like if you go into a thrift store kind of. But it was like everything was brand new, but we found this game called Psychic Circle. And it's supposed to be like a Ouija board, but you're supposed to be able to say this prayer beforehand, and it keeps all the bad spirits away, right? So we're young and dumb, and we're, in 8th grade. So we're like, oh, let's get the game. And we kept it over at my other friend's house. Not going to say names, because I don't know how these people feel, what they remember, or if they want anybody else hearing about them. But we had played this game, and we did this, little prayer or whatever, and we were all really, really stupid, and like, oh, who am I gonna marry, and who's my guardian angel, and like all those stupid questions that you ask, right? Okay. Well, at the time, my grandma was sick, and we knew she didn't have much time left, but we really hadn't spoken about it a lot outside of the family, just because there was just a lot of unknowns, and it was just really stressful. And this is back before, like, obviously social media and cell phones, where everybody knew everything about everybody and whatever. Me being the, stubborn, pig-headed teenager, thought, okay, I'm going to ask it a question that nobody knows the answer to. Because at this point, people knew my grandma was sick, but we hadn't discussed what she was sick with at the time. So I was like, how's my grandma going to die? That's how I asked. That's what I asked this board.
That's messed up, by the way.
And you've got... I know, but everybody else is like, what's my husband's name going to be? How many kids am I going to have? And I'm sitting here going, like, if this shit's real, like, I don't want to know that stuff right now. I mean, like, because, like, you know what I mean? I just was like, that's whatever. So I was like, I'm going to ask it like a real question that nobody knows the answer to, because then I could prove whether or not my friends were pushing the little thing around the board, you know? And I asked her how my grandma was going to die, and it spelled out broken back. And I laughed because I was like, oh my God, grandma was sick with lung cancer. We knew she was going to die. We had been told we don't have much time left. You know, and at that point, I think my grandma had stopped treatment because we just knew it wasn't going to work and whatever. And it said that she was going to die of a broken back. And at this point, she was staying out at Aunt Debbie's house, in a hospital bed. Like, we had a nurse come out and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, just keep her comfortable and everything. Pretty much hospice. Debbie was helping take care of her. So when I got this answer, broken back, I just kind of giggled and laughed. And I was like, okay, whatever, guys. You're pushing this little thing around the board. I don't even know what it's called. And, like, that was it, right? Didn't think anything of it. Like, a week later, we're at home, and Mom gets a phone call, and it was Debbie calling Mom, saying that they had gone to the hospital because Grandma was not feeling well or something like that. They had taken an x-ray of Grandma, and while she was moving in the bed, she had hairline fractured her spine. And Debbie tells this to Mom. Mom gets off the phone, and she tells me the story. And I started crying. Like, I dropped to the ground and I started crying. And Mom's like, what is wrong? And so I told her this story. Like, Mom, a couple of weeks ago, I was playing with my girlfriends and we played this game and I didn't think it was real. So I was joking around and I asked how Grandma was going to die. And it said broken back. And she was like, that's not funny, Ginny. Don't play that game. And I was like, call every one of my friends. I was like, and I gave her all of the 4 of the girls' names that were there and their phone numbers. And again, this is before cell phones, so it's not like I could pre-warn my friends, hey, my mom's going to call, tell her this. You know what I mean? I mean, we were one of the first people at the time to have caller ID. Like, that's how long ago. So she calls every single, well, I think she called 2 out of the 4 because 2 of them were like my best friends that I'd been friends with for years. And the other 2 I was friends with, but I hadn't known them as long. So Mom just was like, okay. So she asked these 2 friends, like, Ginny said you guys were playing this game the other day. What sort of questions did you guys ask it? And she just like kind of let them, you know, come clean on her own. And like, she hung up the phone after she got off the phone with these 2 girls and was like, don't you ever play that game ever again. Ever again. And then a week later, my grandma died.
Did they say that was technically the cause?
So I think they put down like lung cancer was the cause, but I think if I remember correctly, there were some complications to the spine being hairline fractured because she had had so much chemo and the cancer had gotten, you know, away from her. And so I think there might have been some additional complications. I don't know that that was listed on the death certificate. I don't know. I just know that I'm sure, kind of like with Mom, she had cancer, but what really killed her was the stroke. Yeah. But the stroke wouldn't have happened had she not had cancer and had all those surgeries. Yeah. So, like, did she die from a stroke or did she die from cancer? You know what I mean? Like, the stroke is listed as cause of death, but the stroke was brought on by cancer. So it was kind of the way that it had been explained to me was that she died of, lung cancer, but the lung cancer is what created the ability for her to hairline fracture her spine. And so that was creepy, right?
Yeah.
Never wanted to play it again. Well, then the next year.
Did you play it again?
Around Halloween. Listen. So the next year around Halloween, the same girlfriend had a Halloween party at her house. And there was maybe 20 of us. And some people were downstairs watching a movie. Some people were handing out candy. Some people were upstairs wanting to play this psychic circle game. And my friend who, do you remember the teddy bear that I have and what his name is? Okay, so you know who that teddy bear is named after, right? Yes. Okay, so that friend of mine really wanted to play this game, right? And there was, I don't know how many people were up there. There was 4, 5, 6 people up in that room. I, however, refused to play the game. I was downstairs in the living room watching a movie. I don't even remember the movie that we were watching. I think it was Toys with Robin Williams. Okay. And all of a sudden, here comes everybody. They had a loft in their house, so you could come out of her room, and with the loft, like the banister, you could look over into the living room and see everybody. And so my friend, who Teddy Bear, looks over the balcony and was like, Ginny, come up here, like, the game's not working, blah, 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 blah. And at this point, everybody had heard the story about what had happened because they wanted to know why I wouldn't play. And I was like, no, I'm good, I'm fine. He eventually talks me into, can you just come, like, into the room? Fine. So I walk up the stairs, and I stand in the doorway of the room, and there's people sitting around this board, asking it questions, and it wasn't moving. And I stand. I'm not shitting you. This is not pulled out of my ass. This legitimately happened, okay? And I know you're going to sit here and think I'm, like, just pulling crap out of my butt. I stood in the doorway, and that little clear thingy in the middle, right? People's hands were on it, but they had lifted their hands up because it had started spinning really fast in the middle of the board. All by itself at this point. Nobody's touching it. And then it, like, flew and broke my friend's window and flew out the window. My friend, who the bear is named after, ran down the stairs screaming like a little girl because he was freaked out, and he never again would touch that board.
No shit.
He was like, oh my God. He was running down the stairs. Like, he would push people out of the way and shove them down the stairs if it got him down the stairs faster, and refused at that point to ever touch that game again. I stood in the doorway, Amy. Stood in the motherfucking doorway. Didn't touch the board. Didn't ask it a question. Nothing. Yeah.
I love you, but I don't want to be near you. You creep me out. Maybe your energy.
It's a little creepy.
Yeah, your energy is apparently
And I haven't had anything like that crazy happen since then. I've had a couple of small things where I'm like, oh, that's odd, But that was at that moment, I knew that, like, that is not something I want anything to do with.
And it's stories like that I've heard from other people, which is why I won't touch one, because I want nothing to do with it. I don't want to open that doorway between me and the spirit world, because I have also been told, so, like, people have told you that you have a very whatever spirit that brings them in. But you said it at the beginning of this.
Like a portal?
No, I don't know if that's I don't know if that's definitely not what you said earlier. But you have, I don't know. Anyway, what I've been told by people is I have a very healing spirit. So just, like, being near me helps other people, which is funny because they must all be taking the healing, because I don't get any of the fucking healing. It's some bullshit.
I don't know what kind of spirit I have. I just know that I just seem to be inviting that sort of energy. And like I said, I might be having experiences like that if I was maybe looking for them and trying to pay attention to them. But I really honestly just kind of keep my mind closed off to that. Now, with that being said, Mom comes to me all the time. Mom comes to me often. And I know people are just like, well, what do you mean? Well, obviously, for those of you who know, Mom passed away. It'll be 8 years this October. So we're at 7.5 years. And before Mom passed, and I think we might have discussed this in another podcast, we always used to joke about Mom turning streetlights on and off when we would drive. Like, if we drove underneath a streetlight, because Mom had radiation and chemo in the 80s to get rid of her cancer. So we always used to joke that Mom was radioactive, and streetlights would turn on and off. It was just a running joke that we had in the house. But I will find now when it's just me, usually, and I'm driving, like, early in the morning or, like, late at night when there's hardly anybody on the road and it's just me and I don't have the music on and I'm just kind of, like, in my feels, a streetlight will turn out when I'm driving underneath it. And I was like, oh, Mom's visiting me. And it's like in those moments I know that that's mom. Every once in a while when I'm driving with the boys, it'll happen too. And I just know that's mom just kind of telling us, hey, I'm here. I'm looking out. Now, I don't know if you, believe in that sort of thing, like signs where even if they're not ghosts or spirits, that they're still finding ways to communicate with us.
Those
just for
those
peace.
I believe, because I don't feel that they are stuck to this realm. They're just visiting, you know what I mean? And that one for me, occasionally outside my bedroom window, there's a frog, and Grandma was obsessed with frogs.
Yeah.
And it'll just sit outside my window and it's only ever in the evenings, and it'll talk to me for a little bit, and then it like completely goes away. So it's not like it's there and it's staying. It's there for maybe 20 minutes and then it's gone.
Yeah. And I know that some people think that that's a load of bullshit, because people will think, well, it's because you're looking for those things because you want to communicate with those people, and that's your mind playing tricks on you. And I could see how, from a scientific standpoint, how that would be possible. Perfect example, my husband and I are looking at buying a new car, and he pointed out to me the other day, I swear to God, I did not notice how many Kias and Hyundais are on the road until we started looking at buying one, and now everywhere he looks, he sees them unintentionally. So scientifically, I could see how it could be explained as, if you want to see a sign, you're gonna see a sign. But I like to believe that I want to see that sign, but that my loved ones know that I need to see that sign in that moment, and are finding little ways to just bring comfort and peace to you.
Yep.
That's just the way I choose to see it. I am not a religious person. I don't know that I believe in heaven and hell. I don't know that I don't believe in heaven and hell. I am very much in believing with you that I think if there is a hell, it's Earth. And being here forever would be awful. But what's beyond that, I do not know, and I don't claim to know. So it's hard for me to say that no, that doesn't exist. Signs don't exist, because I don't know what exists past what we know is human life.
And I'm okay with not knowing. I don't want to know until that time comes for me. I do have a story that was told to me by somebody about Grandma in her last days. And I don't know if I've ever told you this. So
I don't know that you have. I don't know that I've heard much about those last few days. Because again, everybody, Grandma passed a week before I gave birth to my second son. And at the time where I'm living, we were under a 3-week ice storm that had snapped power to a lot of the region here. So we didn't have power or running water for like 14, 15, 16, 17 days. And this was also, again, before a lot of cell phones were widely available. So there's a lot of things about around the time that Grandma passed that I might have heard at the time, but because of what was going on, it didn't even register on my radar.
And like, for anybody that's like, well, why didn't Ginny come? She was a week away from giving birth.
1,600 miles away.
So she was not going to come out to even like be there for us emotionally, Chris and I, because she had other stuff going on. Like, and we get that.
And when did Grandma die? January
18th.
18th, yeah. And Elle was born on the 29th, and I was due on the 25th. So, yeah, I mean, we were 7 days out from my due date when she passed. So there was no way a doctor was ever going to let me on a plane.
So she went into the hospital on a Monday, and she passed on a Wednesday. And sometime in there, like, there was always somebody with her at all times in her room after she got admitted. And one of the times it was just her and Gloria, Aunt Sunday's best friend. Well, she saw Grandma moving around and kind of stirring. And she's like, Ginny, what was that? And by the way, Ginny was named after our grandma, so our grandma was also Ginny. She's like, Ginny, what was that? And she's like, the angels, they're here. And Gloria's like, I'm sorry? What do you mean? And so finally Grandma kind of came to enough to explain that the night before she was in the room, Aunt Sunday was asleep, and these two men came into the room and said, let's go. It's time to go. And my grandma was like, I don't know what you're talking about, but she got up and went with them. And then all of a sudden, as they were headed down this hallway in the hospital, a very bright hallway, they're like, wait, it's not time yet. You have to go back. You have to wait a little longer. And so they walked her back to her room. And then not the next night, because it wasn't that far, a couple hours later or something like that, she was visited by another nurse, and this one was a woman, and was like, it'll be one more day, and then we'll go ahead and bring you back. And grandma died the next day.
Isn't that crazy? Because I've heard stories like that too.
Yeah.
That you see either loved ones or somebody there to guide you.
See, and grandma apparently told Gloria that they were all nurses. And so to her, that's what was comforting. But yeah, it was very...
Well, yeah, because from what I know of grandma's life, a lot of her past relatives, she really wasn't super close to. So I don't know that she would have gone with any of those people had they been the ones to show up in that moment.
That's
true. Because grandma had a troubled family life when it came to relationships.
Grandma was also raised by her grandmother.
Right, not her own mother. So, like, I'm just wondering if maybe in that moment, whatever's on the other side that brings you knows what you will find comfort in or what you will...
What form to take.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they were nurses that had passed that had at some point crossed paths with her, or maybe that's just...
The funny thing is...
what their role is in that life
maybe.
After.
And the funny thing is, actually, grandma did work in a hospital briefly. She was a surgical janitor or something like that. She essentially cleaned up the surgical suites. So
I did not know that.
Yeah, it was very brief. I mean, unfortunately, I was at the age where I didn't pay attention as much to some of the stories that were told. So,
well, yeah.
Yeah.
And by the time we were old enough to really know anything, grandma was pretty much retired at that point and was just cleaning houses for some friends.
Yeah. Well, and I was only 21 when she passed.
Elle is just turned 16, so it would have been 16 years ago on a month ago, pretty much. Or 2 months ago. It would have been 16 years. Isn't it weird, though? Like, it's just interesting to, like, hear people's stories like that. And, like, sometimes I feel like unless you're the one experiencing it, it's hard to not relay that story once you've heard it and to embellish because it is just so unbelievable. So sometimes we hear these stories and you're like, there's no way. But then you also hear of people who have been on the brink of death and came back and have had these stories and have things to say. And but again, is that because that's what their mind needed to get them through whatever pain or suffering they were in? Or is that legitimate? Because our brains are fascinating things, and it's highly possible that that's just your brain's way of making it easier for you, and so you're not scared, to go into whatever step is next. How much of it is a unknown phenomenon that happens in our brain, and how much of it is a legitimate afterlife sort of thing,
Yeah. No, like, it makes total sense.
Because it's not like you can do, like, research on someone's brain actively while they're dying to see, like, what it's doing.
Although I would be very fascinated with a study like that. Like, just to hook up electrodes and see what synapses are firing when they're going through that stage. So that would be kind of a cool...
I mean, I'm sure somebody's done it, but there's only so much information you can get.
Yeah. Well, and especially when it's like a traumatic death, I'm sure it's a totally different synapses are firing than if it's a death that you're prepared for. Your
bodies if it's just old age, I mean, it's different than old age to a stroke or cancer or something. Everything's different. So, like, again, I don't know that you could do a study on that and it would be the same across the board because each death experience, each birth experience is different. So I don't know that there's one common denominator.
So I've also heard of people having visions while they're, like, under anesthesia. Have you ever been under anesthesia? How many times?
Yes, twice.
Anything you remember?
Nope.
Yeah.
Not a damn thing. The last one I did was my breast reduction. And I remember being wheeled into a room because like they have you in your prep room or whatever, and then when they're ready they wheel you into the operating room. And I remember being wheeled into the operating room. It was very big, very bright, whiter than hell, huge lights. And I remember it being full of a whole bunch of people, but there was a couple of guys there that were other nurses. And I remember thinking, oh, they're all going to see my boobs. And then they put a mask on my face, and the next thing I knew, I was being wheeled out of the room. I could not tell you what happened at all. Like, I mean, I literally remember them saying, okay, we're going to put a mask over your face. And then I literally remember waking up as they were wheeling me to the recovery room.
That's funny. Like, when I was put under, I've only been ever put under once, and it was for my gallbladder removal. And like, they were talking to me about what I was going to do over the weekend, and all of a sudden I was gone, like out of it. Like, I don't remember anything. They didn't have you do the count backwards from 10 thing. I don't know if that's a thing anymore or if it ever was.
Oh, no, it was, because when I had my wisdom teeth removed, I was all the way under and they had me count.
Yeah, I've never been put under for literally anything else other than my my gallbladder removal. And then I remember when I did wake up, I don't even remember being wheeled out. I just remember waking up in the recovery room and feeling like I was going to vomit because
yes,
yeah, I forgot to tell them.
That is the thing with us.
I forgot to tell them that I was prone to motion sickness.
Yep. That's what happened to me too, because before I came to, like, when they were taking me off of the whatever it was that puts you under, they had put a Zofran tab behind, or patch behind my ear, because I had told them I've been under anesthesia once before, and it was for my wisdom teeth, and I had gauze in my mouth, and I came to and I puked, but I couldn't get it out of because I had gauze all over in my mouth. It was awful. So I made sure when I had this surgery that I told him, that I'm prone to motion sickness and I don't do well with anesthesia. And our house was maybe 5-6 blocks from the hospital. And then we drove home, and I literally had to have the window open, and I laid my head on the windowsill just so I could get cold air in my face to make it the 5 blocks home so I didn't throw
For the
up.
second one?
Yeah, even with the patch and everything.
See,
it was awful.
When I woke up, they told me, they're like, yeah, you have to, because I asked when I could go home, and they're like, well, you've got to be awake for X amount of time before we can release you. And I was like, okay, I'm up. And then I don't remember the car ride home. Because Bill had already gotten all my meds while I was in surgery. He had gone and run all the errands that he needed to do, and he stripped the bed and made it, and did all the things that he could do so that he didn't have to wait at the hospital, because he does not like hospitals. So as soon as they called him and told him that he should start probably coming back, he came back. And I don't remember the ride home. And I don't remember much of the rest of that day.
I don't.
And my surgery was
when
like
I had
first
the
thing in the
last
morning.
one. So was mine. I had to be there like at 4 o'clock in the morning. And well, I had to be there at 4 because you had to do intake. And then because I was having a reduction, he had to go in and he had to do all the markups and everything. And then they have to give you all the pre-stuff or whatever. And then I remember when I came out, they were like, okay, well, you're free to go whenever, because my ride was there, which was my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time. And I couldn't get out of the bed because just moving my eyeballs made me nauseous. So, I had to lay in bed with my eyes closed because I could not even move my eyeballs. If I opened my eyes and moved my eyeballs, I wanted to puke. I do not do well with anesthesia, and I've made it very clear to every doctor, I don't really take pain medication. I really legitimately do not, unless it's absolutely necessary, so that when I need it, it works. The problem is I think I've done the exact opposite now, where it, works too good.
Same.
So I think that's why I have such a hard time with anesthesia. It's
same. I remember leading up to my surgery, I was on painkillers, and I had to take them. I had to. And at one point, the painkillers weren't working. I was in so much pain that my coworker, who was also my neighbor, she took me to the hospital, and they gave me morphine, and Amy doesn't do well with morphine. So apparently I become a little bitch. And I don't mean a pansy bitch. I mean a raging psychotic bitch. She was driving me home, and this guy ran out and crossed the street, not at a crosswalk, and I leaned my head out the car window and I was like, use the crosswalk next time, asshole. And she's like, Amelia, you are going to get us shot. And I'm like, well, then maybe he should use a crosswalk next time. And then we called her mom, who was also our boss. And she's like, so what did they say? And I was like, they told me I'm full of shit. Because the pain medication had backed me up so bad that I had, like, I was literally full of shit. I just needed to poop. So FYI out there, when someone asks you, have you pooped lately? They're not joking. It fucking hurts if it's backed up.
It's a question as a mom that I ask my children every time they complain about their tummy hurting. When's the last time you pooped? Right? That's the first question I ask.
It's not a joke, man. It's true. It's so true.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. Never thought that would be one of the main questions I asked as a parent in my life. But just in case anyone's listening, I ever wondered, that's the first question you ask when they say they don't feel good and it's their tummy. When's the last time you pooped?
Yeah.
But anyways, so back to visions while people are under anesthesia. I have never had visions. I've never heard of people having visions.
I have. And I don't know, maybe it's because like they're having complications and they don't know because they're under.
Yeah.
And so their body's going through something traumatic and it's like trying to absorb something. I don't know. I think it's a fascinating subject and a fascinating conversation.
I think it's all fascinating because, again, to circle back with, our brain is such an amazing organ. There's so much we don't know about it. So I think it's just really, really fascinating that there's so many different ways that you can explain things, and there's a scientific side of it. And then there's also part of it that we're just never going to know because there's just so much to learn. I think that it's fascinating to hear these stories and try to find different ways that you can pinpoint, where it's coming from, whether it be from your brain side or a paranormal side or spiritual, or because I always kind of equate paranormal with evil, negative energy.
I mean, I think that's a fair connotation.
World, yeah. Whereas spirit world to me doesn't necessarily, it's not so demonic and heavy. Yeah. But anyways, that was what I wanted to talk about today because I was just talking to some friends a couple weeks ago about just some kind of weird stories, and I just thought, that'd be fun to talk about, see if anybody else has had any weird things happen to them.
I do, however, remember you trying to make your mom believe that there was a spirit in the house after watching Sixth Sense.
Oh my God, that was hilarious. Oh my gosh. So I worked at Hollywood Video at the time, and I had already seen The Sixth Sense, so I knew about the movie. And spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't watched it. If you haven't watched it, fast forward a little bit because I don't want to spoil it. But, the scene in the movie where the mom leaves the kitchen for whatever reason, and then she goes back to the kitchen and all the cabinets and cupboards are open. So I actually did this to both my parents.
You did it to Pa as well?
I totally did this. Oh my God, I totally did it to Pa and Gina too. Because I had already seen it. So like I had seen the movie and like I knew my mom would love it. But my mom, she was easy to jump scare. Like this is where I get you walk up behind me and you could barely make a noise and she's going to punch you unintentionally, right? So I got up and I was like, I'm going to go make some popcorn. And while I was making popcorn, because the microwave makes noise, I had opened up all the cabinets and all the drawers, and I had done it as quickly but as quietly as possible. Made the popcorn, went and sat back down, waited the whole motherfucking movie. Because this is before the scene where all the cabinets and cupboards are open. Because I didn't want her to correlate the two, So she gets up after the movie's over, and of course she's shocked because she didn't see the end coming and all that other kind of stuff. And I'm sitting on the couch and she walks into the kitchen, and I've never heard her scream like a little bitch before in my entire life. She literally, I think she dropped whatever she was holding, screamed so loud, and I am laughing my ass off because I know what she's screaming at and I can't hold it in anymore. She's like, Jay, was this you? And I was like, she's got a picture of me somewhere standing in the kitchen with all the cabinets and drawers open.
That was...
But I did it to Pa and Gina.
I didn't know you did it to Pa and Gina.
It was harder to do for them because it was in their apartment up in Sammamish.
I don't think I ever was there.
And like, the way that the kitchen was is like, if you were sitting in a certain part of the living room, you could kind of see the kitchen out of like your peripheral vision. And so it was kind of hard to get away with it without making noise or be seen, you know? So I was able to do it, but I don't think I got as much of a jump scare out of them as I did Mom. It was great.
That's funny.
Oh man. So if you've seen it before and you know somebody who hasn't, try that prank. It's great. I forgot about that. Anyways, that's it for today, guys.
All right. Just as a reminder, shoot us any emails with suggestions or topic ideas or anything like that. Ginny and Amy podcast.
Or any of your paranormal.
Yes. Ginny and Amy podcast at gmail.com. GINNYANDAMY podcast at gmail.com.
You can also find us on Instagram at Bitch and Siblings Podcast. Like our photos, you can send us messages on there if you don't want to use the email, whichever platform you want to use. You can find us.
All right, everyone. Have a great day.
Have a good night. Day, whatever it is.